Welcome back to The Roottrees Are Dead, Roottreemania. Elias Roottree, the family man, the root of the Roottree family, had an affair. This has resulted in a new secret line of Roottrees, which we now have to track down and identify. No, not the raccoon. If this is all news to you, hop over to the channel and the Roottrees playlist to catch up on all the drama, and if you enjoy my content, consider liking or subscribing. Okay, so this one is a bit of a silly, potentially hard to find, but if you research Lauren's diary book, you get a new page from it. I mean, I guess we researched Bess's book and we got it this time. It wasn't in the previous one, but it feels like for a book we already had and then having to search it up again to get new information, that's like possibly the most hidden thing to know. But yeah, because I was put every single piece of information into every single thing, I've brute forced into it. An entry entitled Cruelty from Lauren's diary, written in 1963, focuses on the relationship between her mother and her father. While it offered only redundant information during her previous investigation, it mentions the subject of affairs and might be more useful this time around. I am no stranger to true love. Jacob and I married at the age that most deem unfit for marriage, but he was also enlisted at an age that most deem unfit for war. We had no choice. I knew in my heart that our marriage was one for the ages. He and I would still be together today if not for Okinawa. That was nearly 20 years ago, but there is an emptiness in my soul. I do not understand my contemporaries. So many girls I went to school with have taken multiple lovers. So many of my girlfriend's husbands have been unfaithful. If I am able to remain true to the ghost of a man with no chance of physical reciprocation, no potential for long conversation, how could it be so hard to love someone you can reach out and touch, someone you can joke with? I mean, you know, it's. I think she's kind of clinging to the ideal, like they were in love and they got married and he got shipped out and died, right? So never had time to, spend 20 years with him and get annoyed at his snoring or whatever else goes on after you've been married for a long time. I'm not saying it's an excuse for cheating, okay? Shouldn't be cheating, but just she's seeing marriage through just the kind of early section of, everything was wonderful, we got married. And then like, how can other people have problems when they can actually be together? Which is why that's where the problems come from. Interactions with other humans. You have to learn to do all the hard work and resolve any issues. And obviously people are not always good at communicating and solving issues. I have not had to deal with such madness at home. My parents are a perfect match in the worst way. My mother's cruelty is a perfect fit for my father's general spite. In turn, Pop's status enables her incessant need to gloat and feel superior. I have grown up with their cruelty and disdain for others my entire life. Even my family remains unspared. They make fun of my grandpa and his family, saying, blood is thicker than syrup, but nothing's thicker than Elias. They mimic Grandma's Gwyneth's lisp and see her kindness as a weakness. Elias, please remember, Sam. Not even our families, maladies, and religion go unmocked. Remember, God only put one eye in miracle. Jesus. I can say without a doubt in my mind that my parents have never had eyes for anyone outside their marriage. They're too self-centered to look astray. Okay. So they don't have problems because they're just happy being terrible to others together. It's one way to live your life. However, this is a value of 1. And there's nothing really here of value. Like, what am I supposed to take from this? Like, they're not even part of the cheating situation. Like she says, they were actually faithful. So is this some sort of clue for Elias? I don't know. Okay, back to the search engine mines we go. Okay, apparently Jim and Diamond are still great. There's been no rumors on infidelity. They just live their life. Okay, we get something about Caroline Morden. She did a television interview. We got a partial transcript from it. It is apparently of no value. And it's only her answers, so we have to figure out what the questions were. Thanks for having me. I never really fit into the family, so it didn't surprise me. She could have put me in if she wanted to talk about the time during my activist days where I almost got arrested for stealing the spark plugs out of all of her tractors, but I don't really think it fit her narrative. Okay, so that's Caroline saying that she's not mentioned in Sam's book. Yes and no, they never tried to kick me out or send me to live on a farm, if that's what you mean. But I was already pretty unpopular, and once everyone learned why I divorced my husband, 3 people paid me attention. Okay, so that's like, you're gay, they didn't like disown you and treat you like not family anymore, I guess. She's my wife, not legally, but we've been together for half our lives. Call it what it is. I was 20 and had just had my daughter. I had to look back on that time because I was the terrible mother for the first few years. I left my daughter with my ex-husband and followed Guy on a private jet to Europe. He lost a tooth and a client. I found love and a better understanding of who I was. Still, in our family's eyes, his trip was somehow more acceptable. Explain that. Okay, so that's talking about, yeah, she went with Guy to Europe, and that's how she figured out why she wasn't happy with being married to a man. But she's bitter because like also Guy can be going through women however much he wants, but she's the bad one. No, I couldn't stand him. Our family wrote off his behavior like he was some huge fan of romance or women, but he didn't like the entire woman. It was doubly awkward for me because he was more supportive than most. I slowly figured out it was because he assumed I would be as shallow as he was. He was a workaholic, he seemed nice enough and did a good job. I didn't know him well. That was one of Sam's problems with our family. None of us did except Carl. Honestly, I get why she's pissed. Okay, so that's talking about Carl. I tried not speaking of the dead, not just as you want more stories about Guy. Okay, so she's not worried about just dishing the dirt on Guy. With Carl though, all I can say is we used to be friends before they sent him to private school. He came back a lot judgier. It made sense when they made him president. He was a lot like my father after they disciplined the fun out of him. After I started protesting the farms, he stopped returning my calls. Oh well, he's harder to label. When I was a teenager, he was basically drunk or high or both all the time. He actually used to sell me pot. His problems with women were different than guys, but he never really judged me. I guess he knew it would be pretty hypocritical to judge anyone for anything. Back then, he was destructively unreliable in every way, but nowadays he's just kind of boring and old. I prefer that to how he used to be and to Guy and Carl, but it's still a cautionary tale. I hope I'm never that boring at all. Okay, so that's her opinion of Clark, the current president, I guess. Okay, but that just gives us a little bit of background, nothing actually useful here. So let's continue. So I found something, but before we get to the actual something, I looked up, well, all of the names we had from the list and everyone and everything. And November Studios, and it has a website now, and they are open on various days. This changes everything, because how much time do we spend looking for November last time? But well, anyway, that's not the important thing. Looking up through every single name and every single thing, I've ended up looking up Bess Williams again. We looked up her book again, so that's how we got a picture of Elias. But there's actually more if you just look into her name, talking about how she died in a hurricane in 1926 outside of Miami, and also that there was a library where she lived where they named a section after her. And if we look up the library, it actually did an evidence print for us. So this might be what we're looking for. So there are many libraries in the area, and that one no longer exists. But there's now a Miami Print Museum. You come across their website, it's at their hours, very small museum. One of the exhibits in the courtyard, which includes a fountain, as well as a statue of an unknown author. A picture has been added to your evidence. And there's a printing press that were used by the Miami Sunday. Potentially a new newspaper from the area that we can use. It merged with another newspaper and became the Miami Mercury Sunday. The Miami Mercury Sunday was a newspaper that lasted only a year, Find a small website about quirky printing history facts that mentions the Miami Mercury Sunday was the outcome of merging two smaller failing newspapers that resulted in one larger failing newspaper. This was only notable to the author because by combining the names in the way they did, it was tied for the longest title for an American newspaper at the time. So then we know there is a Miami Mercury. And yes, that gives us a new periodical from the area. And yes, it goes to our periodical and we can look up Bess, which then tells us that she had a young son that was orphaned when she died. And no mention of a husband. And then it talks about bidding by Wildcat Construction, that they will build a new statue and the fountain, which mentioned something. So yeah, now I'm suspicious. After seeing that, can we click her face? We can. And we know what having a picture of someone means. What I became suspicious of is this. Because this page seems to make no sense. It like mentions that her parents were definitely not cheating. And then it mocks Gwyneth for having a lisp. The reason we currently have Beth as the potential affair partner for Elias is because, yes, we have mention of Gwyneth saying, "Who's Beth?" Which, based on this information, could have easily been her saying, "Who's Bess?" So that's an interesting way this all seems to be coming together. But oh my god, they're doing that thing again. Like, I think that was for me in the first, like in the base game, that bit where I completely ignored Swashbuckle My Heart, because I thought, oh, whatever, a silly book in the romance novels. But it was important to finding the re-release diaries that had a lot of information. So yes, this time it's like, I ignored Bess because I didn't ignore her first because I actually looked up her book again to get the picture of Elias, but then I ignored her further after that because I was like, how much more can they be? But apparently it turns out there can be more. So I think on the board we are going to change it from Elizabeth Knox, the secretary, to Bess Williams, the author. But we need to have 5 main people to confirm. So we're on 4 now. Shelley Young said that that will be him here, so we will need to find about him. Now, what later happens is going to be interesting because it appears that the son has a child through marriage, and then this child has a child, but the child is being raised by their grandparents. Yeah, something weird happens here. And then that child gets married, then gets married again. But in this case, I guess the spouse dies, because normally if they marry and remarry through divorce, you get the split up note. But here it's marriage and marriage, so someone must have died and then they've married again. Anyway, getting ahead of ourselves. We need to identify this child. But yeah, the only information here is the construction company. So I guess let's see if there's more about them. It was mentioned once in an article you've already seen about the library, but it's mentioned earlier under headline Constructing a Better World. Frank Wildcat Williams left Florida in 1941, constructor, was a hero. He won the Navy Cross, was bravery in the war. Now he and his wife Ophelia are carrying his fellow soldiers through tough times at home. Wildcat Construction is Frank's company, focused on creating opportunities for soldiers finding difficulty getting back to normal. Ophelia has handled outreach to the wives of local veterans who are often able to provide insight into their husband's needs and conditions. She has, through such outreach, found 13 veterans of the war to serve as Frank employees. The community support has been unendingly and overwhelmingly positive, to the point where if Frank bids on a project, other local companies have decided to step back and let his soldier handle it. This has become a bit of a sore spot for local politicians and business owners, as the bids are often not as low as they expected. The problem for them is actually that Frank has a selective monopoly, but any attempt to circumvent it has caused an uproar and accusation of being an American. It's uncertain what will become of Wildcat Construction, but at least for now, we're rooting for them. Possibly if we just look it up on the internet. Okay. We're getting things. Yeah. Military history website. Navy Cross. Yeah. He got injured. He died in 1996, age 74. He grew up an orphan. Yep. Because his family died in a hurricane when he was young. Yep. He could barely remember his mother and had no memory of his father. He wasn't around, I'm afraid. He ran a construction company. An anecdote mentions that he used to insist he married his wife Ophelia. As a matter of courtesy and convenience, she wouldn't have to change her last name. Okay, so her last name is the same as his. Photo of Frank in his youth attached. Juggling hammers in front of one of the construction sites, as he was often known to do. And he has daughters, Barb and Sharon Williams. Okay, so we can add him with the hammer juggling. And yes, he's actually doing this in front of the library with the statue of Bess, his mother, potentially. So he's Frank Williams. And he's construction. And his wife, Ophelia, also Williams. Okay, so that's 5, but it didn't lock in. Okay, I guess we keep going because we have the daughters, so we can maybe find them, and then if we will lock it off again, we will know which one's wrong. Well, he mentions the daughter, so see if we can find anything. Okay, Barb Williams is a motivational speaker and she has a website that explains the services she offers. Her comics address is set in Coconut Grove, Florida. Okay, yeah, we have a flyer. Mr. Testimonials. Let's just save those people in case they're important. Overcoming adversity with Barb Williams. Okay, that means we can add... but we don't know which one she would be. Is she the daughter or the daughter-granddaughter situation? Maybe we can find out more from this. Okay, too common of a name. What about this TV station? No online presence. Giant list of television call signs next to city Springfield. You may need to do a deeper dive on a specific city and state to see if any locals have discussed the news in that area. Okay, Springfield. No. Effingham County. No. We need specific city and state. Oh, we need to find a state for this. There's a Springfield in Effingham County, Georgia. Okay, so we're looking for Springfield, Georgia. Come across the website, there's different channels available there. This is only feature broadcast with female news anchors. The person who runs the website has ranked each using 3 categories, none of them relevant to journalists. The internet, isn't it lovely? One of the entries, Channel 12, the news anchors is as Greta Flores. Greta Flores used to go by Greta Jones. Compared to the ordeal you've gone through to simply figure out her name, it's way easier than you expect to find that she has a website of her accomplishments. She was apparently the MC for all-female speaking tour in 1977. The tour was called Storytellers of Sisterhood, The Mothers and Daughters of Earth. You do a search for it and it seems they were compiled into a book simply titled 25 Stories of Sisterhood by Isla Hale. They're really making us work for this information. Like, there's no way you're stumbling upon this in any way. Okay, printing. Anthology of stories told by stories of sisterhood tours. Direct transcript of the most well-received stories told on stage. She's the editor. Yeah, Barb Williams is added to your evidence. Okay. The first part of the story focused on two 16-year-old girls. My sister Sherry was a brat, always sulking, often disobedient, never on time. She borrowed things without asking and even ran away from home only to sneak back the next day like nothing had changed. My daughter Sharon, on the other hand, was a beautiful person. She had excellent marks in school, was intensely artistic and creative, and even volunteered at an animal rescue. She continues to tell the stories of the two girls until she shifts the narrative. What was the difference between Sherry the brat and Sharon the beauty? Is it nature, nurture, a better education, different opportunities? The answer is nothing. There was no difference because my sister and my daughter are the same girl. Yep, it's the daughter-granddaughter line on the family tree. Barb reveals that her daughter was the result of an unexpected pregnancy when she was only 15. I met a boy at a county fair. Unlike us, he lived in the nice part of town. He went to the good school. To a teenage girl, it felt like a fairy tale. But there were boxes all over his house. He was moving in 3 days. Those 3 days were heaven to me. The final night, he surprised me. He told me he could actually see me again soon. He planned to return to visit his grandparents. I thought I was giving him a reason to keep his promise. I never saw him again. And when I finally got desperate enough to ask around, a friend of a friend told me he hadn't even given me his real name. Barb also talks about when she found out she was pregnant. I was convinced my life was over, but my parents, they took charge. I had to live at home and work a part-time job. But they removed the burden of motherhood. I managed to scrape out a degree in English, and as far as my daughter was concerned, I was her much older sister. Barb uses the story to come to a conclusion. When I was younger, I thought my sister was the brat, and I wasn't wrong. But she ran away from home to work at an animal shelter. She borrowed my clothes for presentations at school, and her creativity allowed her to open Sherry's hair. It took me far too long to realize the beauty was always there too. In fact, the brat and the beauty exist in all of us. It was my inner brat that kept me blinded to the truth. And I'd like to say it's the beauty in me that's finally able to see what I was missing. I implore you to call upon the beauties in yourselves whenever the brat tries to take hold. Okay, so she's this one. So Barbara. Yes, Williams, and she's a motivational speaker, public speaker. Yes, there we go. And this is her. Okay, so we get a lock in here, so one of the other ones is wrong. Booyah! Okay, so it's Lisa that's wrong. Okay, let's see, because I don't think I looked her up. Nothing under this name. Nothing under this name. There we go. Under her married name. Yep, she was in the army, she lost a limb. Okay, she's a professor at West Point Military College. She went to the military because she thought her dad was an Air Force pilot, but actually he was just a criminal. So she's a professor instead. That's what we were missing, because I forgot to look it up. Okay, and this is Sharon? Yes, Sharon Williams. And she's a hairdresser, I assume. And this Sherry's hair has some different meaning. Well, let's look her up. There is a Sherry's hair in Orlando. The owner of the business is Sherry Jastrzemski. Sherry has a large van. On the weekends can bring the style of Britney, Christina, or even the Rachel to your door. The About Sherry section is very, very long and presented as one paragraph with multiple random sentences and no pictures. You get the sense that if she were to do your hair, she'd be doing a lot of talking. Yeah, not for me. It mentions that her husband Pete was her late husband's college roommate. Okay, so Her husband did indeed die, but then she married his college roommate. She had never spent any significant time together until she became a widow, and they built a charity together. They left the charity behind because it was growing beyond their ability to run it. She also brags about her kids, Tony, Marc, and Cricket. The oldest, Tony, seems to get the short end of the stick. His two listed accomplishments are that he's the oldest and he's a straight-A student. Marc, on the other hand, has multiple baseball accomplishments listed. Apparently his Little League team is nationally recognized. Cricket York is near the end and has an entire section dedicated to her. She's an actress on a local television show called Liberty Library. The reason Sherry relocated from Miami to Orlando, Sherry, in addition to being hearable to come do your do, is a stylist for the show. The passage also mentioned her agent recommended they change her last name to York since it was easier to pronounce. The rest of the section describes how she got the part, but it seems unimportant. It's easier to pronounce than Jastrzębski. Okay, so we have a lot here. I guess we would have to know what the Little League team's name is to look it up, but I guess Cricket is gonna be the easiest to search because she's an actress. It's a children's show, filmed in Orlando. Multiple children and interact with animal puppet in a small town called Liberty. Isn't funded by the public. Instead, it's paid for by donations from businesses related to education that include texts with manufacturer Arithmetic and tutor companies such as Educate2U and a few well-known publishers of picture books. From what you can find, it's syndicated in few markets across the southern United States. Those that grew up with tend to have fond memories that works in your favor because the show has been documented by a few fan sites. There's even a Liberty Library web ring, though it only has 3 entries. You click through the sites in the ring and find the Cricket York joined the cast in 1997 at the age of 5 and is still listed as a current cast member. Okay, so she's a child still, but she already works as an actress. And we get a picture of her. Is the raccoon someone's child? No. So she is the youngest of them. So she goes by York now, but her actual name is Jastrzębski. And she's an actress. So her father's name is also Jastrzębski, and I think it said that it's Pete. Yeah, and apparently there's a picture of him available somewhere. We need to find the brothers, but because they're from the previous marriage, they will have a different name. Is this anything? They made a book and then they make a 5th edition and then they did a text search and replace. So when they changed the 4th edition to 5th edition, they also asked students to calculate the 5th side of a rectangle. Classic, but not related to anything we're trying to do. Okay, this one has some printing. Educate2U is a tutoring service. They have a deal with Liberty Library. Some of the actors are on their website. They provide tutoring for the actors and actresses to accommodate their shooting schedules. Okay, so Cricket is on the pictures. And some people were scared of the little girl on the logo because it looked like a demon doll. And I would race to TV to switch it off because of the creepy laugh. Okay. I mean, some kids' things are sometimes like super creepy. Okay, so that is her and her siblings. Unfortunately, on the name it just says perfect student and not their actual name. But that gives us, this is gonna be the older, then the younger. And I think there's like, yeah, Tony's the oldest. Anthony. But what is their surname? And then it's Marc something. And I guess they're not actors, they're just K-12 students. Okay, how do I get their names? Okay, so going back to the testimonials from Barb's leaflet, we get the other person who provides testimony, big Elmsworth. They ran the Kikiwa Falls Gazette, and they basically just ran articles about local things. He talks about seeing Barb do her speeches more than once, and he mentions that she shared a story about loss, specifically the loss of a bicyclist who had been hit by a car. She spoke about the death of any person as a darkness in their loved ones, a cold, empty void that begins to creep into a space where there was once light. Because the light could never return exactly how it once was, she says the only option is to nurture the new sources of light to help fight back the darkness. Her conclusion was that fighting the hidden meaning in tragedy is the most important thing we can do. She used multiple biblical comparisons and finished by looping back around to her initial story and how she personally began to come around to this ideology. The biker who died was her son-in-law, and the Lanes Across America charity was created to fill the newfound darkness her daughter experienced. The charity was the light that began to fill the void, and she was doing everything she could to help nurture it. Okay, so we can maybe look up this charity, and yes, we get pictures. The charity focused on adding bike lanes to major cities. The page and pages of news articles that mention lanes across America have a similar summary. The LAA, formerly LAM, was founded in 1987 after the death of Drew Smith. Drew was biking home from work when he was hit by a car. Each year since, lanes across America has grown, and I know how offices in over 12 major metropolitan areas, including Miami, where the charity began. They have a picture of Drew, and it's been added to the evidence. And that's him. But that's, a picture from his wedding that's been cropped out. That means there is probably an uncropped version. So his name was Drew Andrew Smith. And therefore those kids' names will also be Smith. So we just need a picture of Sharon, which is if we get the uncropped wedding picture, then that should do it. It says formerly LAM, so it was laying across America, but since they started in Miami, they would have been laying across Miami. Yeah, those are the older ones. Yeah, so they stepped down. Yeah, they started cropping out the picture, but there is a full picture on this older stuff. So before we add her, let's do the alternative pictures. So we have, this is the new husband because they were friends. This is alternative Barbara, and we have alternative Cricket, but we can't add her because she's not logged in, so we are forced to finish it off on Sherry. So this is all the main required people, but as if in the main game there is also the top secret envelope. So that will be its own thing that we'll get into next time. I will see you soon on another adventure.